Yeah. Hello there. I was just reading some Amazon reviews of the movies we're talking about tonight. My name's Jeffrey Bützer, and this is the Day for Night film discussion podcast thing. Tonight, is special guest is Ian Deaton, who was on the second episode, and he's so good. I asked him to be my co-host, but he said he doesn't have time, so he's just going to come back every once in a while. Um, we're going to talk about favorite movies because there's people in the world that have lists of their favorite things and people that don't. And I think me and him both are list makers. And so we both decided to talk about our favorite movies. So without further ado, Ian Deaton.
Hello, everyone out there in internet TV land.
Yeah. What's that poster behind your head?
This one,
The action guy, yeah.
yeah, that's for Miami Connection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a made in Orlando exploitation film, financed and produced by I believe if I remember correctly, a Taekwondo master, but he also owned a series of schools in Florida, like in North Florida. And in the 80s, he made an action movie with he got hooked up with a couple sort of like canon type dudes that made action movies, and they helped him make it. And it's fucking incredible. I highly recommend checking it out. It's one of a kind. That's all I could say. It's entertaining as shit. And it was I think it only got released in the theater for like 2 weeks and it flopped, of course. And then it got released on VHS, and the people that run Alamo Drafthouse reissued it in like 2010 or something like that, I think. And
That's what I
I
think I
actually,
heard of it.
huh?
One of my best buddies, Patrick Shelton, lived in Austin at the time. I think that's how I've heard of it. Because what you're
Yeah,
saying sounds familiar. So I think I have heard of that.
yeah, it's
That's
really fun. It doesn't. It's one of those like really bizarre where I'm sure there's probably like a "How did this get made" episode about it. It doesn't. It doesn't. All the circumstances it shouldn't exist, but thank God it does because it's a wonderful movie. Somebody that has like a really strong artistic vision, but I don't think YK Kim, that's the name of the producer slash writer, and he's the action guy. Grandmaster YK Kim, excuse me. That's his official title. But anyways, yeah, I'm brain farting right now. I don't know. I'm talking too much about this movie, but
No,
yeah,
all right.
it's that, and then Thrilling Bloody Sword, which is a great Taiwanese um, adaptation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs that we showed at the Plaza a couple months ago. That was
Oh, cool.
awesome. And then, of course, Sidney Lumet's Prince of the City, starring Treat Williams of One Tree Hill fame, and one
Yeah.
of the finest performances ever in a crime film. It's one of my favorite movies. It's amazing. It's so
Oh,
sad too. Huh?
Sitting did Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, right?
Yes, that's
That was his last
correct.
movie. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like, it was like I was kind of like, it's his last movie. It's probably gonna be okay. And then like I was just completely blown away by it. Like I just sort of forgot about it, and then watched it a couple of years ago, and I was like, holy cow, man, that guy still got it. Really
yeah.
good.
He was like 89 or something like that when he directed it, or 86 or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
incredible. It's such a good story, and Philip Seymour Hoffman was so great in it.
Uh,
Um, yeah, I
speaking,
say what?
I was like, speaking of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. Yeah, we picked our favorite movies to watch, and they're totally different. And I was wondering, like, what's your relationship with favorite things? Like, how did you like? Do you have like lists and top tens and things?
Yeah, sure. I tried to. I used to make insane long lists for people, and after a while, I finally realized how annoying and cruel it was for me to make like 50 best, zombie movies or whatever, like 50 best spy movie, like
Yeah,
five or 10. no more than 10. And it's one thing if it's like a magazine or something, like we're counting down our 100, but like if you're going to give a list to somebody, like on a personal, like, if you're, a personal list that you're, just do 5. That's it.
Yeah.
And
I like
honestly,
the,
especially if somebody's like trying to crack into a new genre or something, like, what's the best werewolf movies? Just give them 2. you know, but but if somebody's really hungry, I think 10 is the limit. But yeah, I used to be all about lists, and then I realized I was driving my friends crazy. So
yeah,
I mean, I'm
I
not
do
opposed to them.
time.
I'm
I
not
post them
opposed to
all
them.
the time. So what?
Oh, go ahead. I keep going. Oh,
Oh, no, you're good. No, I like lists because mine change all the time. And like
yeah,
I think we might have talked about some of this last time because we did like talk about Clue and the Master last time. And but I
yeah,
was saying like um a lot like I'll get this sort of like reputation of being like an arty farty guy. But it's just because like we didn't watch like Goonies and stuff growing up. Like I just had the older
yeah,
sisters that would show me like The Shining and stuff. And so like my first
yeah,
exposure to film was like 80s action and then like Kubrick and things like that. And so I lean towards that like movie. If you saw my top like 20 TV shows, it's like Smallville would probably be on there. Like I watch like Gossip Girl and Smallville and Monk. I
yeah,
watch pretty low bar TV, but like movies, I'm not too into schlock. And when you were talking about that Miami Connection, I was wondering if how you feel about like bad movies because I've always said I don't think there's a bad movie. There's just movies you don't like because I
yeah,
I I think Troll 2 is like wildly entertaining. I think every scene,
yeah,
even though you're laughing at it, I think every scene is funny and entertaining, and you're like, where is this going to go? It tickles all those places that like you want to be tickled when you're watching something of like what's going to happen. Um,
yeah,
and like I would rather watch that than like La La Land, you know. So I consider
yeah.
Troll 2 to be a better movie than La La
I
Land.
agree. I agree. I
But
think
I
I
don't
think
like
the
last
yeah.
thing I was going to say was I don't like intentionally bad movies like Sharknado. I was wondering what like how you feel
Yeah,
about intentionally bad versus like unintentionally bad.
this I mean, it it just depends, it's like a case by case basis. I've never actually sat down and watched Sharknado. I do know that like Roger Corman had still to this day is still making movies. I mean, I think on a very light level. He's like executive producer now, but I believe he had something to do with those movies. They seem like right up, his alley in terms of the stuff that he's put out. But as far as like, I mean, the kind of wink wink like bad movies, like I don't know, they can be charming and like fun, but but I don't know. I definitely I definitely like movies if they're gonna be if they're schlocky and bad. I prefer the ones where the filmmakers and crew and cast are trying their best, and
Yeah, yeah,
and the movie has just gotten away from them, and they're helpless, and so so I prefer stuff like that where it's like unintentionally. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, some of my favorite movies, fucking, oh, geez. Now, of course, I'm completely blanking on all the movies that are in that. Hammer. That's one of my favorites. It's like a late '80s Tampa, Florida made Dirty Harry ripoff, directed by Enzo G. Castellari, who
oh
made
yeah,
the
yeah.
original Inglorious Bastards and all his Italian genre heavyweight, made like probably like 60 movies. But this is his career where he was like not doing very well, and they were making like weird Dirty Harry ripoffs in Florida and Georgia, like in the '80s and '90s. But anyways, that movie, I love it so much because the action sequences have no business being as good as they are. Like the car chases and fight scenes are incredible. And the editing is amazing, but like the dialogue and acting is so weird and inept and makes no sense. So it adds this like almost like David Lynch type element to the film where it's like it's just, when it's action, it's like it's a really entertaining, great action film. But then you go into these like weird, long, dramatic sequences where characters are talking and it doesn't make any sense. And one of my favorite performances in the film, it's on YouTube. If you go in, I think it's also called Hammerhead. It's from like 1987, I believe, or just Hammer. Anyways, if anybody likes bad action movies or bad crime films, definitely please check it out. But yeah, there's a scene in there where basically, I can't remember the story, but it's like that. It's kind of like the gang gets back together, like these team of mercenaries get back together because one of them is murdered, and they're back in, I think they're in Jamaica. They're supposed to be, but it's all filmed in Tampa. And they're reuniting to try to figure out, what happened to their friend that got murdered, and they're informing one of their team operatives that their friend is no longer with them. And it's this actress. I've seen her. She's kind of like a character actor. I don't know her name, but she, like, you can tell she's trying her hardest to deliver and commit a compelling scene of, someone saying, "Oh no, my friend's dead," but it comes off like Catherine O'Hara in like Beetlejuice or any of her comedies when she like kind of loses it. And you know what I'm talking about, like in Beetlejuice when she's like crying and being like, "If you do not, let me do it I want with this house, I will go insane and I will take you with me," like that kind of performance. But it's like, this woman is genuinely not going for laughs. She's really trying to like deliver and commit to this dramatic Oscar-winning sequence. And it's, I don't know, I can't explain it, but if anybody wants to track down Hammer and skip to the scene with the blonde woman crying, I don't know. I'm not selling it very well right now.
No,
but,
it sounds good. Kind of reminds me of the one. We're not doing our favorite bad movies, but we've gotten into that. So like, yeah, Troll 2 is definitely up there. And did you happen to see the documentary? Did you see the documentary best movie or whatever?
I did. Yeah.
My favorite thing was that like everyone else kind of just accepts that it's like what it is. And
Yeah.
what's so the way it got made was, the people that don't know, is there's like an Italian crew, and since all the actors were amateurs, none of them decided to like tell them that the script was bananas, and so they just like read everything as it was. And so when I saw them live, and one of the actors was like, "Yeah, I got on set and we're out in the field," and the director was like, "You run upstairs now," and he's like, "I run up the stairs? What do you mean?" He's like, "Yes, run up the stairs and scream," and he's like, "We're in a field." He's like, "Yes, run up the stairs." And so he's like, "I just took off running. I didn't know what to do." And like, so apparently that's how the movie was made. But the woman that was in it was like bonkers, and she says it's like Casablanca. She considers it like a masterpiece, and I like that too. And she's like a little out there, but yeah. So I guess we better talk about our movies. So I
Let's roll
wondered.
up our sleeves.
Yeah, let's get into it. I think we have our favorites for very different reasons, and I'd like to get into that. So, like, I think you've talked a little bit about how Clue is a little, it's probably wrapped up with a little nostalgia for you.
Yeah.
But like when you're deciding some of your favorite movie, is it because you like watching it like the most amount of times, or like you just like the world? That's it, and like the world that it's in.
Both for that movie specifically.
Yeah. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're fine. No, I mean, I as I said in the other episode, looking back now, I'm almost 42. It's about to be my birthday, but I think I was like between, if it came out in, I think 85 or 86. I can't remember exactly when that movie came out, but I would have been, not even, I would have been like 5 or 6 years old. And as I said in the last episode I was on, my parents things were not going well with them, and they were getting ready to get a divorce and separated. So anyways, I think it grabbed me in that way because of all of the trust issues and double crossing and whispers and everything in that film. It was something, I guess I was maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say because my memories are so fuzzy, but I gravitated towards it because I mean, my most clear memories of watching that movie was just I thought it was funny. It was like,
Yeah.
madcap, zany. But then as I got older, I just became obsessed with watching it. I watched it like over and over again. And then especially once I started learning about filmmaking and becoming obsessed with like micro genres and stuff, found out specifically, like, I mean, it's on the surface, it's a fucking corporate piece of shit. Like Hasbro, like, wanted to sell a bunch of they were like revamping Clue, and they were like, yeah, Mr. John Landis, like, and George Fulci, like, you're gonna make a commercial for us. That's basically what it was. But the thing that I thought was really cool about it is John Landis and George Fulci. John Landis was originally supposed to direct it, and he
I
did
thought he
American
did
Werewolf.
until yesterday.
Huh?
I thought he did until yesterday.
Yeah.
I've always thought he directed it.
Yeah, it's very much like, I mean, George Fulci is John Landis' producer, and whenever George Fulci makes a movie, it feels like a John Landis film. And a lot of the same cast and crew sometimes show up. So it's like if George Fulci is involved, then they kind of go through John Landis and George Fulci's like sort of rogues gallery of cast and crew members. But I mean, I could go on and on. I'll try to keep it succinct, but basically, they hired, Hasbro or whoever. Yeah, I guess it was Hasbro. Like, hires them to make this commercial, and John Landis, like I said before, he's done American Werewolf in London, Blues Brothers, Animal House, Kentucky Fried Movie, so many fucking great comedies of the 70s and 80s. Into the Night, one of my favorite crime comedy films. But anyways, he basically wrote a treatment and maybe even like a script, but he just couldn't figure it out, and he didn't have time. And I think he was beginning to work on Into the Night, or maybe there was, if I remember correctly, might have been around the time where they had the Twilight Zone incident where the cast members were killed on his movie, and he was like not in a good place. So basically just handed it off to Jonathan Lynn, who was a British television director, and then he was getting into feature worlds, did stuff like, I think, Nuns on the Run, and like things involving like Eric Idle and some Monty Python people. But anyways, insanely talented. He was a playwright, I believe, for a while, and he did that show, Are You Being Served? The BBC show. It's like super rapid fire dialogue. So he was used to that world, just like the kind of, just super fast comedic delivery and everything like that. So anyways, they hand this treatment slash, half written script by John Landis off to Jonathan Lynn. And Jonathan Lynn goes really like full bore with it, wanting to get, I mean, I think he had directed maybe a few features before that, but he wasn't making much of an impact. So this was kind of like, I believe, his first big Hollywood thing, because I think he had primarily worked in the UK before that, and that was it. But so I know more about this movie than probably anybody should. But one of the interesting things is, like a good writer, you're going to do a lot of research. And Jonathan Lynn, because he was living in the UK at the time, there was a lot of ex-Hollywood blacklisted people that had been kicked out of Hollywood and blacklisted during the McCarthy era. So there was all these expats, literally from Hollywood, actors, producers, directors living in the UK, working, but also like kind of keeping a low profile because their lives had been destroyed by the McCarthy era. In Hollywood, they literally had people like spying on them and like digging through their garbage at night and shit, like all kinds of, a whole nother movie full of shit. And he was really inspired by that story, just talking to these people. So they decided to set Clue in the 50s during the McCarthy era and have this whole, blackmail plot. Because I mean, the game itself is just a ripoff of Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. I will not be saying the other titles because they're all extremely offensive. But yeah, it's all, it's just a riff on Agatha Christie and Edgar Wallace, the mystery ensemble. But anyways, I thought what they did by subverting the kind of Agatha Christie formula and not only making it funny, but also adding this historical element to it of setting it during the 1950s McCarthy era. I don't know. It's just, again, it's like on the surface a really silly comedy, but there's something about that movie that just grabs me. I love the world that they painted, and I wish it were bigger. And I've as a novice screenwriter, I've written a couple. None of them have been made. One of which is actually may get made. I'm talking to some people now, but anyways, that's not important. But what was that? Oh yeah. As a novice writer, I realize how important it is to build worlds and make your characters real. And like the more stuff you add, from your brain and from the real world, they really start to breathe and talk to you and all kinds of crazy shit that anybody who's ever written anything understands the eerie kind of experience that you go through like that. It's fun. It's great.
I'm writing something right now. Oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah, I'm writing something right now with two main guys, and the first 10 pages. I mean, when I first started getting going, they felt a little indistinguishable, and then 20 pages in, and then when I did the rewrite, it's funny because I'm like, oh, that's not a Wade line, that's a Larry line. You know what I mean? You start, you start even when they're just two-dimensional, and you haven't even pictured what they would look like, and you're just writing. Yeah, it is a bizarre occurrence when you're writing, because then all of a sudden they're like, oh, yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, they'll tell you, and it's creepy because when you tell people who don't write, they're like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And you're like, "No, that's." I mean, the screenplay that I just finished writing with my writing partner Becky Fury. That's we had these ABC kind of things like, oh, this is how this scene's gonna go. They enter here, they talk to this person, and then they leave through this door. And the characters were like, no, we're not going to do that. That's not. And we would, finish writing the scene and be like, holy shit! It went to, instead of ABCD, it went to, whatever. Yeah, XYZ. It's really an incredible, awesome thing, and I don't know how to. I mean, it sounds like some lame humble brag thing, but when people truly say I don't think I can take credit for it anymore, you really do feel that if you build the world and you build the characters real enough where you can understand their emotional their emotions and their past and everything. I mean, you can smell their sweat. It's like they really start to tell you where they're going to go, and it's fascinating. So anyways, having said that, bringing it back to Clue, I just, again, I'm sure it seems silly that I'm attaching so much meaning to it, but there, I think I talked about it on the last podcast, but the whole idea of this network of informants that are constantly blackmailing all of these politicians and politician friends and everything like that, and I don't know, there's a whole bigger world there that I wish would have been explored, and maybe I'll have to do it myself. Not fan fiction, just write a fake version and just change the name to something. Whom with a question mark. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I have a review from my 10-year-old, and then I have two questions for you about the movie that I'm not sure about. So, as a whodunit, after watching it over and over, first question is: did you see it the first time with just a single ending, or did the first time you saw it, did you have the triple ending?
I saw it on VHS with my mom, my sister, so it had the triple ending on it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I didn't get to see it. Oh, did you see it in the theater?
No, I never did. I only saw the triple ending on VHS with my sister as well. And yeah, it's funny. Some movies I don't remember the first time I saw, but I specifically remember it was an afternoon watching it with my sister Samantha. But yeah, so the other day I rewatched it, and I honestly I probably last time I saw it was on TV in the early 2000s, maybe. I probably saw part of it, so I hadn't seen it. And I'm gonna read my son's review, and then I'll ask you my question. My son has he has Rotten Potato instead of Rotten Tomato. Uh, that's his. That's what. Oh, yeah, where to go? Rotten Potato. That's his reviewing. He does. He has a little notebook, and him and his brother write reviews of movies. It's not long. Don't worry. So, Clue. Clue is not recommended for many reasons. I say this because it's very claustrophobic and upsetting. And on top of that, there's many unnecessary ways they show characters. Although I can see some effort on the filmmaker's part, but overall, 4 out of 10, definitely not worth watching. 40% out of 100. So he's a tough critic.
Wow,
He,
that's a good review, actually.
yeah, he said he saw that the filmmakers tried. He doesn't like smoking either. He made a list, and I had forgotten about the bosomy ladies because when I saw it,
Oh yeah,
I
Colleen
was like,
Camp.
so what?
Colleen Camp, the actress.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that
I was
plays
like
you bad.
9, and
Yeah,
the French maid went right past me when I was a child. I don't remember.
yeah,
I didn't remember
yeah,
that at all. She's like bouncing around the whole movie, and my kids didn't
yeah.
notice that. But he did put in his notes because he was taking notes while he watched it. Weird girls, he wrote.
I
Um,
love that.
Yeah, he's a tough cookie. No, my question is, as a whodunit, when you go back and watch it, are there actual clues that make any of the endings make sense?
So the that's one of the things that I think is really interesting about that film is there. Okay, so I think I don't even remember where I found this information out. It might have just been on YouTube or like maybe, but either way, there's interviews with John Landis and Jonathan Lynn talking about the film, and they used a lot of exploitation tropes to really get the audience in there. The three ending was, in John Landis's words, a classic William Castle move. You know, he did The Tingler and all those movies that were known for like, you know, smell-o-vision and stuff like that. These ridiculous things that would
Yeah,
get people in the theater. And the triple ending was them trying to do a William Castle basically in the theater. But it didn't work. It flopped. And it didn't matter. And then also, of course, obviously, you know, making Colleen Camp dress in that ridiculous outfit for the end. I mean, honestly, she makes it work as an actress. Like, it sucks that she had to do that, but at the same time, like, obviously, she was having fun with it, and you know, it's whatever. It's part of a kind of a body, BAWDY, like tradition of like, you know, silly musical theater and like rapid fire comedy kind of stuff. So it pulls from a lot of different things. And what was I going to say? Damn, did I
about
answer your question?
well, no, yeah. I mean, I was just asking about like the whodunit aspect of like if you go back and watch it, are the
Oh.
characters not actually there? Does it make sense?
So that's the other thing that's really interesting about that film. So there are people. There's actually a YouTube video where this guy has watched it and literally written down. Whenever I watch it, I just get taken away by the film and I can't
Yeah,
examine. I don't. But there's somebody on YouTube that like literally wrote down like every single scene and what characters are there and what. And he was like, "There's only one true possible ending." He's like, "I know because I wrote down the entire structure of that film." And according to this guy, the only true ending is that Miss Scarlet done it,
okay.
because when you add up all the other endings, for example, if Miss Peacock did it, or if Wadsworth, aka the real Mr. Body, Tim Curry, did it, if you go back and watch the scenes like where people are murdered, like they're like in the room, so it's like, oh wait, no, they couldn't have murdered this person because, and
Yeah,
that's
I like
so,
that
so
more.
yeah.
I kind of like it more because I don't. I love whodunits. Like I love the show Monk, and that's one of my favorites because I don't know if you've ever seen it, but
Yeah,
you watch
Monk's
that.
great.
The endings are so ridiculous, like sometimes, and they have like the corniest like jokes, and I love it. Um,
Yeah.
but I like that this one when it was over, I was satisfied with the triple ending, but then I was like, I don't think any of that makes any sense, but I loved it.
It
Um,
doesn't. It's definitely, I think, like I know John Landis like said he had problems trying to figure out the ending, and that's part of one of the reasons. In addition to the William Castle style of throwing the three endings on the end, I think honestly that was kind of like an exploitation move to like sell tickets, but also like a move to cover up like that. Like I, from what I know, Jonathan Lynn wrote like a very tight script, and then like George Folsey and John Landis and a bunch of the producers kind of like, during the middle of the film kept getting him to make changes, which that happens with Hollywood movies. That's why there's tons of great movies when you actually examine them. You're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. And the movie, that's part of one of the reasons why I like it, because it doesn't make any sense. And that's another connection I have with it is I used to have nightmares when I was a kid about Clue, but like a not funny version of it, where the main part of my nightmares had to do with the secret tunnels, and I would always be walking in between the scenes. Like I could hear the characters like having like dialogue. Like I would be in the secret tunnels, and there was in the film, they constantly say, is there somebody else in the house or isn't there? Like, is there more people than what we see? And that question always, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it right now. That question was always so much more fascinating to me. I think it's the things that they bring up but then don't resolve that's more interesting to me, and why I go back to that film over and over again. Which again, in reality, it's not super tight as a story, but I think the things that they suggest make it really interesting, and the idea that there potentially is a person that is completely unseen that actually is committing the murders, and they're all just blaming each other. That's really fascinating to me. And also, there's a bunch of heavy nods to like people like Dario Argento and stuff. There's literally scenes with black gloves, like grabbing things, which is obviously a trope of like mystery films, but specifically with giallos. And John Landis loves giallo movies, and he's talked about them a lot. So it was cool going back, especially once I became obsessed with giallo films, going back and watching Clue and being like, holy shit, there's like little giallos in this. Huh?
I noticed that too. Have you been to Italy before?
No, I got close. I was roadieing for one of my friend's bands, and we were in Lausanne, Switzerland, which is like really close to the border of Italy. And I was like, can we please just cross the border and just go into Italy? I just want to say I've been there. And they were like, we don't have time. So that was as close as I got.
There's an Argento museum that looks really cool, and the reviews are so funny because like apparently it's like really crummy. Like there's like VCRs with like tapes on loops playing, and like extension cord running across the ground, and like it's really small, and like it's on my like I'm gonna try and go in the next couple years, and that's like one of my top things I want to. I'm not even the biggest Argento fan. That just sounds like the coolest thing ever.
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. Same thing. I like him, but he's definitely not my favorite like Italian filmmaker. But it would be awesome to what he put out into the world, and that is strong enough. Like some of his movies are, so bad. But I mean, Deep Red and. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that kind of leads to a question I have. This isn't to get either of us in trouble, so we're going to have to tiptoe around this. But I was wondering what your relationship with controversial filmmakers, like, you seem like the kind of guy, if I was going to guess, that like after somebody did something heinous, it would really taint your view of their work, like a Polansky or a Berlucci. And I don't think Argento's done anything heinous, but I mean he was definitely like considered quite a misogynist in his day. And I was wondering, like, what's your am I correct? Do you kind of just write people off, or can you still enjoy Rosemary's Baby?
I mean, it's it's a question that I've had to. I mean, as I get older, I think I can't defend those artists, like especially Polansky. But like, I mean, there even people I know that like, I mean, he did horrible, horrible, horrible things that are completely unexcusable. But like, I mean, I know people that are even more feel even stronger than I do about him, like being disgusted by him, and still are like, God damn, Rosemary's Baby is good. Like, I've literally heard people say that are horrified by his behavior, but then they'll like come into Videodrome and be like, do you have a cul-de-sac
Yeah, I was about
on
to say
on the
cul-de-sac one of my
Criterion
favorite.
Blu-ray? Like, I want to watch it. And see, that's the thing, is like, I think that it's fucking complicated. And I think, as far as like what, publicly I don't endorse him, but like, there's, it's like Lucio Fulci is a perfect example. Luckily he's fucking dead, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But like, he's one of my favorite filmmakers, but he was a piece of shit. He was a terrible person, in real life. Like, he was literally like outright misogynist, to the point, like, he would say it in interviews, like almost like it was like a political affiliation. It was disgusting. But then at the same time, he's dead, so it doesn't matter. And his films, despite his childish, like, you know, what am I trying to say? Feelings of, and towards women, strangely enough, his movies say otherwise. And that's the weird thing about it. Is like, I watched this documentary about him called F for Fulci, and they interview his daughter.
Yeah.
And she talks about how he was an incredible father and not a misogynist to her. And she was so glad to have him in her life. And basically, I'm not trying to like, excuse his behavior, or paint a sob story for Lucio Fulci, but it was really sad hearing the stories. Basically, he was like a comedy director in Italy, was married, like had the love of his life, like with his wife. Like, they met when they were young, and they were married, and they had kids, and they had a wonderful life. And then she died, I believe, of cancer, and really suddenly, and it was horrible too. And after that, he just all of a sudden was like, I hate women, I blah blah blah, I don't, and
Yeah.
again, it was, but the interesting thing about it was, you saw that even though his position was not defendable at all, it was
Mhm.
actually coming from this like deeply hurt, insecure place. And it was still his true actual feelings of not being a misogynist were showing up in his movies, because almost all of his movies, the main characters are women, and they're going through these sometimes cosmically, I mean, literally, like, they go through things that these insane supernatural situations,
Mhm.
most of his movies. And I don't know what the point I'm trying to make is, but again, I'm not trying to excuse his behavior, but
No,
but
no,
it,
I know what you mean.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that with some of those filmmakers that are pieces of shit in real life, their work betrays them, because that's kind of one of the things about cinema is, or art in general, is if it's really good and the artist digs really deep, they're going to tell on themselves, and they're going
Yeah.
to say things that their subconscious mind is aware of, but they're not. And they may even be lying to themselves about. So was Lucio Fulci a piece of shit? Is Roman Polanski a piece of shit? Absolutely. But I think if you have the patience to look at their work and examine it from a perspective of like viewing it like a reflection of, I don't know, I just think it's an interesting, I mean, there's so many filmmakers where they tell on themselves basically with their art, despite them
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
trying to do that. It says their true actual feelings. Sometimes that can be horrifying, where somebody like Harvey Weinstein, at the time, when the movie The Burning came out, which is like a Friday the 13th exploitation knockoff. It's
Mhm.
actually is a slasher film. It's very effective, but nobody knew what a monster and a terrible person he is. But when you go back and watch that, because he wrote and produced that movie in like 81, I believe, or 82.
Hmm.
And when you go back and watch that movie, his whole, I mean, it's horrifying now going back and looking at that film, because you see his feelings about the world and towards women on full display. But
Yeah.
that wasn't what he was intending to do.
Well,
Like,
for me,
so,
it's like,
anyways,
oh, sorry.
yeah,
Oh no, I was just saying, like, yeah, because I kind of get myself into trouble sometimes because I do like a lot. I mean, I'm good at compartmentalizing, and so like when I'm watching Cul-de-sac, I don't really think about Polanski anymore. I'm just like in the movie, and I'm like, it's already made, you know, it's
yeah,
here. Um,
yeah,
and definitely Woody Allen, I get in trouble, you know, because like I mean, he was so like such a big deal when I was a kid, like
yeah,
his humor. But you just bring up certain names, but it's like you said, there's these lines. Like I won't watch Last Tango in Paris because not only was like Bertolucci kind of like pretty crappy, but particularly in that movie, they pretty much like tortured that girl, you know, like when they were
yeah,
working with. And so like that's where my line's drawn. Where like I mean like you read about Annie Hall and like other Woody Allen movies, and nobody was like, "Oh, I had a terrible time on set." Everyone was like, "Oh, it was great."
yeah,
And like
yeah,
stuff. And same thing with Polanski doesn't have a bad reputation of working with him. He just is an awful person. And I guess that's where
yeah.
my line is. It's like that's almost what I don't like about The Shining because like you see that off-camera stuff of him just torturing Shelley
Oh,
Duvall.
it's
Like
horrible.
yeah, and so
It's
like real life is where I have trouble. Like when people are literally treated poorly in a movie. Um,
Yeah, everybody, but see that's something that nobody ever brings up about, and I'm not trying to do a whataboutism or anything like that, but like everybody, most people I know that would be horrified or are understandably horrified by somebody like Polanski or Woody Allen, they'll say nothing bad about Kubrick, and they'll be like, "Oh, The Shining is my favorite horror
yeah,
movie," and you're like, "But they ruined Shelley Duvall's life during that. They were
yeah, yeah.
working like 14-hour days, and she literally had a mental breakdown, and I believe had to like go to a hospital after the movie was over, and it's like that's fucked up. Like,
Yeah,
and
terrible.
I mean, I still like The Shining, but it's really sad and it makes me angry. And there's
Yeah,
but I think coming down to it, just like you were saying, I think it's all, for me personally, it's all about personal lines, you know, like, and like I used to love Tarantino more than anything in the entire, it was like my favorite filmmaker. But then after I saw the footage of Uma Thurman getting in that car accident down
yeah,
in
yeah.
Mexico, and like you literally see
Well,
like her neck,
there
like,
was
you
there was
know,
other stuff
like,
like where he like specifically like spit in her face where he wouldn't let anyone else do it and he wouldn't use a
yeah,
syringe because he's like, oh, it's not going to look right. I'm like,
yeah,
oh yeah, because you're
it's,
always going for realism with like heads getting cut
yeah,
off and blood. He's like, yeah, it had to look perfect, and so I spit in her face. I was like, ah, you've
no,
got issues, man. Um, we
yeah,
better move
it's
on to
gross.
we better move on to my movie. I want to say one thing,
Yeah,
people out there in movie land. Speaking of John Landis, uh, do some research. It's I don't know if you know this, but people in the inside world, like where you work in the in movie industry, think that John Landis made that Bigfoot footage that's really famous. You've heard that before, right?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He
Like it's
according to
pretty sure it's
legend,
him.
I can't remember whether it's Dick Smith or Rick Baker, but one of those two. They're both makeup effects artists. I think it was Rick Baker. He did the makeup for American Werewolf in London, and a ton of amazing, incredible, groundbreaking special makeup effects in movies. But yeah, I think the way the legend goes, they shot that behind Universal, maybe
Yeah,
like in
I
the
think
field
so. Yeah.
behind Universal. And Rick Baker was just trying out some different stuff that he had built in his like garage at home. And like I don't know if John Landis like operated the camera or something. Maybe he did, but he definitely says he says he edited the Bigfoot movie.
Hey, I feel
Like
like
in
I'm
it.
having deja vu. When we did the last one, did I tell you about my family's like weird Blair Witch thing we did? That got like
No.
this. Oh man, there was like a curfew in our city. My sister's boyfriends, they had. Do you remember those Fisher Price cameras that had the cassette tapes that went in them? Have
Yeah.
you ever
Yeah. What was that called? Pixel Vision, I think, or
Yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my sister's boyfriends were like 17, 18, 19, and I was like 8 or 9. And there was an abattoir out by our house that was like all run down. And they went out there and they got this like paint mixed up to look like blood, and they poured it on there. And they did this is like 80, 88 or something. They did this very like Blair Witch style thing about how there was like a satanic cult in our neighborhood. And this is like the height of satanic panic. And they put
Yeah.
pentagram, and they acted like they were walking for hours in the woods. They were like, yeah. And they turned the camera around. They were like, yeah, we've been out here for a while. It was literally right off the road. You would like walk off
Nice.
and it was right there. And then they like just started making copies and copies and handing them out, and parents started getting them. And it got to like a news station, and we had like a curfew issued. And my mom was like, you cannot tell anybody like we were part of this. Like, she's like, you have to keep your mouth.
Wow.
I was like a little kid in school, and everyone was talking about it, and I had to just be like, yeah, and like not say anything.
Where
Anyway,
was that?
it was in Canton, Georgia. I lived in
Oh,
Canton,
wow.
like 87, 88. And like, yeah, there was like a curfew for a week. And then they kind of just dropped it. But it was several news stories.
Who knows? Maybe the Blair Witch filmmakers. They, I know there's a bunch of different stuff that they were inspired by, but that could have been one of the many stories. I mean, if they were doing good research, I'm sure they read a bunch of different things that could have very well been one of the stories that inspired them to make.
I don't know. I mean, it was funny though. I had a weird childhood, but yeah. So my movie I picked. So we were talking about like how we pick favorite movies and stuff, and it's weird because I'm not a very nostalgic person. I don't keep stuff like, and not that it's a good trait. I like that you're like that. You're probably more emotionally connected to people than I am. I'm a weirdo, but I do pick my movies based on like what I consider my favorite movies are like, yeah, stuff that I like. I want to go into that world over and over and over. And my true favorite movie of all time is 8.5, because like it's in Italy in the '60s, and they're making a movie, and like it's all these like cool guys with sunglasses and beautiful women, and everybody's like having these parties, and but it's not too crazy. And like that's I'd love to live in that world and drive old cars, and like I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful. But my favorite modern movie is The Master. I actually have a top three, and I'll tell you my other one. It's I'm Thinking of Ending Things, which just came out 2 years ago, but we can do a whole nother show on that. But I maybe I told you this, but sort of a quick, brief rundown. My relationship with Paul Thomas Anderson was like this. I saw Hard Eight because I was a projectionist and I watched everything. And I was like, yeah, it's good. It's another one of those Tarantino movies, but it's a little better because it felt a little more grown up. It almost felt like Jackie Brown now that that's come out. Like it felt like
Yeah.
a grown up Tarantino movie. And I was like, oh, it's cool. I like it. And then I was really stoked on Boogie Nights. And then it came out and I was just like, like I was 19. And I was just kind of like, whatever. Like, I don't know. I
Yeah.
didn't wait for some reason. And then I didn't really come around until Punch Drunk Love. I like
Yeah.
Magnolia, but still, I
Yeah.
felt like people like shortcuts because I was like a big movie nerd like you are, and so I
Yeah.
was like
My
all into Altman and Scorsese,
my
and yeah,
mom was. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, and just so I didn't love him until Punch Drunk Love, and then There Will Be Blood, and then I went back and really loved Magnolia. I like Boogie Nights now, but it's definitely if I was gonna rank his movies, it'd be like number 7. Like
Yeah.
it's very low. I don't enjoy it as much as the other. But yeah, I was curious, like what was your like how did you get into him? Do you like him? And what did you think of this one?
I think he's good. I have to agree. I know that he's pretty sure I remember hearing like Tarantino say Paul Thomas Anderson is his best friend in the entire world and vice versa. Or at least they're great friends or whatever. But I agree with you. I do feel like I do feel like Paul Thomas Anderson sometimes is the more mature, less loud and obnoxious Tarantino. Although apparently there's a funny story of Fiona Apple saying that the worst night she's ever had in her entire life was being in Tarantino's movie theater with Paul Thomas Anderson while they were dating, and they were doing coke all night and drinking. And she said that was the
Yeah.
worst night of her life. But just listening to them yap on coke about movies for like
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
until 4 in
Well,
the morning.
Tarantino is very much an only child. I mean, he acts like an only child, and
Yeah,
I've got 3 sisters and 2 brothers, and so I relate to Paul Thomas Anderson because he's like the youngest of a bunch of sisters, and if
yeah,
he's like a cool guy. And he's like super nice, and he's humble. I really like recently some director. I think the guy that did The Quiet Place, that actor, he like made fun of some
oh, John
filmmaker.
Krasinski.
Yeah, I think it was him. I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but he like Paul Thomas Anderson like basically wrote him a letter, was like, "Hey man, it's hard to make movies. Like, don't call out people by name and tell them they did a bad job." And then another story
Yeah,
recently, Kevin Smith. I don't know if you remember, but when Dogma and Magnolia were out, they were asking Kevin Smith what he thought about the movies that were out, and he's like, I keep a VHS copy of Magnolia on my desk to know what a bloated piece of crap looks like, and like when I see someone's ego completely go to their head, and like he just raved on it. And recently he apologized. Not that I'm wasting too much time on Kevin Smith here, but he apologized recently. But basically, like a couple years after that, he ran into Paul Thomas Anderson, and Anderson didn't even mention it. He was just like, "Hey man, good luck with your new movie," because like that dude's like a class act, and that's one thing I like
yeah,
about Paul is because so many of my filmmaker guys, like Kadar just passed away, and then somebody sent me all these links of like anti-Semitic things he said, and Woody Allen, you got
mhm.
Fellini was like cheated on his wife, but Paul Thomas Anderson, by and large, is like a good dude. It seems like.
Yeah. The worst story I've heard was that Fiona Apple one where he just talked too much, basically.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, he was like a famous 27-year-old director given the keys to the castle. And like,
Yeah.
I'm sure, he wasn't the most fun to be around in his 20s when he had a huge ego. But yeah, so what was your take on The Master? What did you think of? You hadn't seen it, right?
No, no, I hadn't. And so I'll
That's
say
the poster
really
right
quick.
there.
Um, oh yes. Oh yeah.
And then there's, no.
So I came to know him as a filmmaker by watching mainly Boogie Nights. I remember when Magnolia came out, everybody I knew like freaked out about it, and my mom was like, "It's a ripoff of Shortcuts."
Yeah.
Like that was my mom loves Robert Altman, and she would always watch Robert Altman movies. And she was, I just remember when that movie came out, she was kind of like, "Oh yeah, I like that movie better when it was called Shortcuts." So,
That's
anyways,
awesome.
but it still wasn't on my radar. And then Boogie Nights came out. I saw it in the theater in when I was back down in Tampa for a little while, but it didn't. I thought it was cool, but it didn't have. I was same thing as you. I was like in my late teens. I was just kind of like, okay, anyways, cool. Neat
Yeah, he
movie.
does like the
But
Goodfellas shot in it, and it's so like filmy. Like he does the Goodfellas shot. He does the
yeah,
Goodfellas story arc of like, I'm going to introduce all these characters, and you're going to love them all, and then you're going to hate them all. And
yeah, and then and then I'm
like,
gonna kill half of them.
and it just felt so much like Goodfellas. And then also the tone irritated me that it's like super goofy, and they're like on roller skates, and they're like, I look like Han Solo, and then it's like gritty, and like I feel like he missed, like he couldn't figure out what he was doing in that one. Um, but anyway, sorry, you can go ahead.
Oh, no, no, it's okay. But so I was going to say, so what really made me start paying attention to him as a filmmaker was when the Boogie Nights DVD, the special edition DVD came out. And I used to work at this health food store, and my coworkers were freaking out about this thing on the special edition Boogie Nights box set called the John C. Riley Files. If anybody's watching, I'm pretty sure you can watch it on YouTube. And it's basically just like maybe 10, 15 minutes of John C. Riley and sometimes Mark Wahlberg and some of the other actors, but mainly John C. Riley improving. And it's fucking hilarious. Like
He's incredible.
tears, I'm like crying laughing. And I had never known that was before John C. Riley was known as a comedy actor. Like he only did dramatic films and like usually just played smaller roles. And I was like, God damn, this motherfucker's funny. Like I mean, I can't even explain it. I won't go into it, but if anybody watching this, go onto YouTube and just type in Boogie Nights, the John C. Riley Files, and you will not be sorry. It's some of the funniest shit ever made in a movie, and it was all on the cutting room floor. So that's how I got to know him and started paying attention to him. Is somebody who let their actors like sometimes go nuts. It was really amazing to see that. And then I started watching all the deleted scenes. Then I kind of became obsessed with Boogie Nights for a little while. And then, of course, yeah, I started revisiting all of his work. I watched Magnolia, and even though I loved Shortcuts. It's its own movie. It is kind of in a weird way like a bizarro version of Shortcuts. But what was I going to say? And then, of course, There Will Be Blood is a fucking masterpiece. That
Yeah,
movie's
great.
amazing. But yeah, so I had not seen The Master, and I don't know why. When that movie came out, I just didn't want to see it for some stupid reason. And it's part of that non-joiners thing that you and me both share, where just so many people told me, "Oh, you got to see The Master; it's amazing," and I was just like, "Fuck off! Like, get out of my face." But I'm really glad I waited to see it because my impression of it. So it was tainted by you, but in a good way, because you were talking about how you think it's a comedy, and
I
I
do think it's
100% completely agree with you. This shot that was just on the screen, but this one too. Honestly, I feel that one. I feel like not only, I mean, it's set in the 50s, but it references and calls up so much classic Hollywood comedy to me, like stuff from the 30s until the 50s. I feel like, and this is just a guess, I have no idea. He might have come at it from a completely different world, but to me, the story between Paul Thomas Anderson, or I'm sorry, not Paul Thomas Anderson, Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix, I almost read that as like a fucking Bob Hope comedy, where there's like this crazy ass sailor and he's a piece of shit and nobody likes him except for this one dude, and they're just inextricably linked for like decades, and everyone keeps being like, get rid of, it's like, I'm trying to think of, like, I mean, there's tons of Bob Hope comedies that have that exact plot where there's a bad guy and there's a good guy and they're best friends, and it's like, I guess I don't know what the subgenre name, but Joaquin Phoenix is a heel, basically. He's playing a heel, and so like it's I don't know. It was like what I read from that movie was, I feel like Paul Thomas Anderson was like, I'm gonna make a Bob Hope movie or a Bob Hope comedy or a Marx Brothers comedy, but make it serious, like make it art.
You know that shot where he lights his cigarette and he goes, menthol, he's just like, cools. I like the minty flavor or something. Like it's just one of those random shots when they're drinking. The outtake on the DVD is them like crying, trying to get through that. He just keeps lighting his cigarette and he's like, cools. I like the minty flavor. And he's like laughing so hard. And you can tell they just had a blast making it. And so my favorite thing in movies is when a movie is not just one thing. Like I mentioned, did you see I'm Thinking of Ending Things?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's the newest Charlie Kaufman film.
Oh, wait. Oh, okay. No, I'm thinking of the last one that he did. That was the stop motion animation.
Anomalisa. Yeah.
Yes.
So oh man, you gotta watch it. It's like, it's seriously, it jumped up to like number 3. So it's like well, anyway, they both have this in common. Where like on the surface, you can watch The Master and you're like, this is like a serious drama about cult, and it's about a cult of personality. You can watch it as a love story because it is definitely a male on male love story.
I completely agree with that. 100%. It is a love story for sure.
I might have mentioned this before. I know I've mentioned on the show. It's not a love story, and like what I loved about their love story is it's not like we're gay and it's the 50s. It's we're not gay. You're married. I like women, but we're like meant to be together kind of a love story.
Yeah.
Like they're like, we're not attracted to each other, but me and you, this is it. It's us two. And and like I love that about it. And I love that it like the first time I watched it, the first time you see a film, like I talked to you about how funny it was. So it was like you said, it was tainted. First time I watched it, just me and my wife saw it like opening weekend, and she did not care for it. And I was like, oh, it's gonna sit with me, this one. There's just something about it. I was like, I don't even feel like I digested it all. Like I feel like there was just too much going on. And then I was like, yeah, really, there was something just kept bringing me back to it. So I went to go see it again. And then I was like, oh, yes, it's just, I got a little more out of it about their relationship. And I mean, I love actors and I love watching them like just having like fun. And their relationship was so captivating to watch. And one of my favorite scenes is like they dock at this like one of their members of the cult's house, and they all invite him in for like a dinner party, and there's a skeptic there. And he's just like he loses his temper and says an
Yeah,
expletive to
calls him
her.
a pig fuck. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very, very, very funny. And like, I mean, the opening scene, like people are like, I remember the first few conversations where I was like, "You don't find that movie funny?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, it literally opens with him fingering a sand woman, like a sandcastle woman, like
Yeah.
fingering her, and then it cuts to him like doing like a Rorschach, and he's like, "Well, that's a lady's pussy." Saying a
Yeah.
lady's pussy is extra funny. Like that's like Larry David stuff, where adding one word makes it so much funnier. And I mean, like
Yeah.
every scene of me floors me, but the ending, that's like, I've talked to people that are like, I cry every time it ends when he sings to him, and I'm like, I cannot stop crying from laughing. It's so funny to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care if I'll spoil it, because it's not really a story. It's just, it's an
Yeah.
Odyssey character.
Yeah.
The ending, he basically tells like Joaquin Phoenix, he's like, if you walk out that door, I'm not going to see you for a trillion years. Like, this is it. And then he starts singing "Slow Boat to China," and
Yeah.
it's so heartbreaking and funny, because he's a grown man singing "Slow Boat to China." Um,
Yeah.
anyway, how many times, I meant to ask you earlier, how many times have you seen Clue?
Uh,
If you had to
I would
guess.
guess somewhere around the 300s now.
Oh, that many?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
I've watched it on like every format. Strangely, I will say I've never fucking seen it in the theater, which is so silly because Wussy Mag has shown it like they show it like once a year, and I need to fucking just go. I don't know why I
Yeah.
haven't, but yeah, I've seen it on every home video format as well as television. I watched it. I even got to a point where I started watching the Blu-ray and the DVD with alternate language tracks. And for
Jesus.
anybody who wants to experience it a different way, highly, highly, highly recommend watching it with the Spanish audio with English subtitles.
Okay.
It's even funnier than I
Yeah.
think it's funnier than the English version. The
Well,
people who they hired to do the Spanish overdubbing are some fucking top-notch comedians. They're so much funnier than, yeah, it's great.
I will say, if I could draw only one comparison between our two movies, is that I think either of them could work
Oh,
with the sound down. What?
they both take place in the 50s.
They both take place in the 50s, but they also, I always, visual storytelling, they always talk about that stuff when you're studying film, about like, that's the problem with Chris Nolan. Like, I like Christopher Nolan, but you can't watch his movies with the sound down. You're completely lost. Like, they're not
Yeah,
visually very consistent. But both of these
yeah,
movies almost could work as silent movies. I mean, they're like so
yeah,
visual. And even though my movie has like a ton of dialogue, like you get it all from their body language. It's so, everything's
yeah.
very like, um, but yeah, the other thing about it, like, I have several reasons for like why I can like, yeah, I don't say best movie, because that's the stupidest thing ever. There's no best art. I just don't. I think I like watching award shows, but it's just so ridiculous. La La Land's better than whatever 12 Years a Slave. It's like, are chicken nuggets better than like Slim Jims? You know what I mean? It's like totally different thing. You're
Yeah.
just it's all stuff we take in, and it's like everybody sees stuff differently. I could have watched, I've watched bad movies on a good day and love them. Like, I watched Terminator 3 and 5 with my son, and they have like 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And if I watched it
Wow.
back here by myself, I'd probably hate them. But he's like, "Oh man, that was a great line," and like, we're just having fun. But yeah,
Yeah.
so like, I really, with the Master. I mean, I'm sure as someone who's made films, can appreciate just like how beautiful it is. I mean, the movie's
Oh yeah.
incredible.
I mean, as I told you before we did the show, like I have let me just, I don't know if you can even see that, but I have like an old Magnavox CRT analog television, and I have a little converter so I can like put a Roku stick in this converter, and then it goes straight onto the Magnavox. And it's a standard definition television, but even that, because that movie, I didn't understand at first when the movie started. Like, usually when people shoot in 75 millimeter, or I'm sorry, 70 millimeter, it's like a fucking Western or something,
Yeah,
people used 70 millimeter to literally throw the audience into like a giant world, like these big epic movies. But one of the things that's also real that 70 millimeter is really, really good for is because the um, focus. I might be wrong about this, and if a camera person is watching this, and please feel free to email me. But I know I've at least with like hearing John Carpenter talk about shooting on super 35 as opposed to just regular 35 millimeter film. It's harder to keep in focus because the focus, the depth of field, I'm sorry, is like shallow. So like from the distance from your finger to your nose, like you can literally make one blur because you're using these different kinds of lenses, and the film just takes in so much more. So something like 70 millimeter, it can really, really draw you in intimately, and that's one of the things that's so powerful about the Master that I saw was like they're having these like it's most of that movie is people talking indoors, not what you would imagine in 70 millimeter, but it doesn't matter because it draws you in so tightly to that world. And literally, they'll pick up a glass and take a drink and it'll change the focus of their face. But it's like, I can't explain it, but it just, the depth of field in that film, I couldn't understand it until I was watching it. And especially, like I said, on this old Magnavox CRT, and it's like, I've never seen anything look that good on this fucking TV. Like, I was like, what's going on?
You sent me like a photograph of like that early scene where their guys are fighting, and on your
they're
TV,
all wrestling on the beach.
when they're like wrestling on the beach, the sailors, it totally made me think of Kenneth Anger, which I never think of when I'm watching this. But I was like, your photograph looked like a Kenneth Anger, one of his wonderful like fireworks or something. Yeah, I could talk about it forever. I love every second of it. And every time I watch it, I get more and more out of Amy Adams because she seems so peripheral and like not peripheral, but like they're the main, they're the main course. Those two guys going at it and fighting and yeah, but she's so like understated, and she has that crazy look in her eye all the time, like a lot of like cult women have.
She was incredible in that movie. She really like, I mean, command, even though just like you said, she's not the main character, and I would say, I would definitely say as far as like the structure of the story, maybe the third most important person, but like she really like, I mean, she's an incredible actor, and her performance in that movie, it reminds me of like Linda Mann's in Days of Heaven, where it's like originally I think she had like one line in the movie, and then like she's so fucking incredible in that film that what's his name, the director of Days of Heaven, Terrence Malick, like expanded her role and like turned her into the narrator of the movie. But it's like even that he built it out for her because she's such a good performer and actor. But it's like, what am I trying to say? In the same way, Amy Adams, like every time she's on screen, she commands your attention, and like she's so fucking good. So it's like, I don't know, she just did an amazing job, and the fact that she's not in the movie that much, but you definitely think of her as like the third most important person in that film. Like nobody should be. You shouldn't think of anybody other than Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix, but you think of Amy Adams because she's so powerful. And the dude who looks like Matt Damon's weird, ugly cousin. Yeah, he's an incrable actor too. He's
the star of I'm Thinking of Ending Things. Believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
Him and Jesse Buckley.
If you type in Matt Damon's cousin or Matt Damon's brother, his in Google, his face immediately comes up.
Yeah, totally.
Anyways,
no
hate Jesse Plemons.
Yeah, Jesse Plemons. He's great. Yeah, I like him in it too. There's like everybody. The guy who played Freddie Mercury's got a little part in it,
Oh yeah,
and
Rami Malek. Yeah,
yeah, he's
yeah,
great. Everybody's great in it. Um,
yeah,
and like again, like with the jokes, like I mean, it's funny because like now I can't unsee that it's funny, and like you just watch it. So like the beginning when he's like getting drunk with the girl in the broom closet, and he's like, "Hey, you want to go out later?" And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then it's just like
yeah,
a quick cut to him asleep in a booth and her like eating by herself. Like
yeah,
that's like straight out of like like Seinfeld or something. Like it's
yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
like the whole thing is like structured like a comedy. I mean, and like yeah, everybody should watch it. The score is incredible too. I'm not the biggest Radiohead guy. Not that I dislike
Oh
him. I
yeah.
like.
No,
I'm
Johnny
not a,
Greenwood is amazing.
I'm not a music guy in general. No, I'm just kidding. But I just
Sure.
don't. I don't know a lot about
Not really
Radiohead.
music.
No, I don't. I don't keep up with rock bands, but I like his scores a lot. And and
He transcends that band for sure. Like
yeah,
I like some Radiohead records, but Johnny
yeah.
Greenwood is like something else.
They oh I know what I started to say. I keep losing my train of thought. Every one of his like nearly all of Paul Thomas Anderson's movies have some weird little surreal thing that's like very subtle or not so subtle, like the frogs and Magnolia. But in this one,
Yeah.
it's the part where like he's in a movie theater and the guy like walks really far with a corded phone is like, "Hey, there's a call for you,"
Oh,
and
yeah,
he's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
like
yeah,
that never happened, and he's like, "Hello,"
yeah,
and he's like, "Where are you? Did you bring my cools or whatever?" Or like
yeah,
um, and like he does it. Do you like Punch Drunk Love?
yeah, yeah. I love that movie.
There's that part.
That.
There's that
Go
part
ahead.
where he like when he's going to fight Philip Seymour Hoffman and he's on the phone and then it cuts to him like 3 states over still holding the phone that he ripped off the wall. Like
Yeah,
I just love he always does these like little details that crack me up. It's funny too. Like I said, I'm a grown man with a best friend. Me and Patrick have been friends for like over 20 years. And I remember I think when The Master came out, he's like, you never mentioned Paul Thomas Anderson when you're talking about your favorite directors, but you love that dude. I was like, ah, he's okay. And like I wouldn't accept it. He's like one of my favorites for the longest time. He's like, dude, you talk about him a lot. Like you really like him. You won't shut up about The Master. Like There'll Be Blood, you were like their first day. He's like, he's one of your favorites. And I was like, all right, fine. He's one of my I don't know why I like
yeah.
put off him being one of my favorites. But like, yeah, it's funny. Do you have a favorite director?
Um, I yeah.
Or like one that you
Currently,
relate to? Oh, who is it?
well, okay. There's two answers. Like currently, my favorite director is Bill Gunn, who did Ganja and he didn't do that many movies. He mostly did plays. He did like probably like fucking 80 plays, and he wrote a bunch of novels and shit. But he did, as far as a film director, he did Ganja and Hess, and he also did this movie called Stop that's unreleased, but we have it at Videodrome. I don't know
Oh, cool.
how one of us got it, but somebody did. It's like I don't know. I highly recommend anybody that can find anything by Bill Gunn, whether he also wrote the Hal Ashby movie, The Landlord,
Okay.
um, which is Hal Ashby's first movie. It's fucking incredible. But yeah, Bill Gunn just as like a creative force, like he's my current favorite filmmaker, just because Ganja and Hess is like, I don't know, it's a work of art. It's not like the most entertaining vampire movie ever made, but it's in my opinion the most beautiful and the most artistic vampire movie ever made for sure.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Have like
but
an all-time
it's
favorite guy though, or
huh?
girl? Do you have like an all-time favorite girl or guy director that you have like a bunch of books on him, or like
I
you don't
I,
really
I
like him?
have to say it's really lame, but cheese sandwich answer John Carpenter. Like
Oh, cool. No, it's great. He's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
But for me, it's
I
Louis
I just
Buñuel.
grew up,
Oh, sorry.
huh?
Oh, I said for me, it's Louis Buñuel. Because like it's
Um,
not even like I love all his movies. I mean, I do. I like his movies. They're all like ridiculous. I relate to him a lot. Like he's kind of like he would talk about when he would write a script. It was usually because he like had some jokes scribbled out, and then he would be like, "Oh, I want to like have this happen." And that's usually how I get. We'll have to do a podcast on screenwriting sometime because I know we write so different. I I write like a draft in about 12 days usually, like start to finish.
oh, nice.
But I do
Wow.
a lot of prep. and so like I just got asked to write a Coen Brothers esque but my own style crime comedy. And he was like, "Did you start on? Did you start?" I was like, "No, no, but when I do, I'll get it done quick." And so I had all these notes. Like I had a note like, "Guy gets pulled over and he has a really huge police uniform." I told you that one. And then like another cop walks up, and he has a tiny uniform, and
Oh yeah.
that joke I told you. And then I had a joke like art forger who's got a busted hand, and then when he gives them the painting, it's really horrible, but they realize that it's not his bad hand, he's just blind. And so like that's why his paintings are so bad. And so I just had a bunch of like really stupid jokes. And then once I get like 10 or 15 of those, I don't even necessarily always have characters. I'll just kind of have like things I want to happen. And then once I have like a whole page of those, I just sit down and like work 4 hours a night, like until I'm done. And
Yeah.
and I knock them out really fast, like 12 days usually. It's usually 2 weeks. It's usually like a full script
Nice.
for my first draft. But I know you work totally different, so we need to come back and do one of
Yeah.
those. Yeah, I guess probably wrap it up here pretty soon. I'm sorry. The It's kind of funny because the my new favorite filmmaker is something I'm going to recommend at the end. But I wanted to read you a couple. I went on Amazon today and I pulled up some 1-star reviews of our movies because
Man.
I always like these, and they're all short. I Some of these just made me laugh, like the wording. For Clue, the first one is frantic and really aggravating. That's all it says. And then this guy just got the wrong thing. I thought I was buying the classic Clue, but I got some movie with a bunch of kids in it. Did not like. And then this guy thought he was making a good joke. I know it had to be a guy because the girl wouldn't say something that's bad, I don't think. This is his attempt at a joke. Only in the United States would a movie come out inspired by a board game. Can't wait for Go Fish. Yeah, good one. And then this one says waste of time, but it's spelled like your waste, which I
Oh,
thought was
weird.
good. Yeah, they misspelled that. Please watch something else. This movie's confusing. On an intellectual level, the panty shot they had of the maid 10 minutes into the movie. That's the full sentence. I'm not saying that wrong. I liked. I'm going to read this again for you. This is their review. Please watch something else. This movie was just confusing mess on the intellectual level of the panty shot they had of the maid 10 minutes into the movie.
Huh.
That's a pretty
Maybe
interesting.
maybe a robot.
Yeah, was there a panty shot?
I don't know. I don't. I
I don't
mean,
remember seeing her
I
panties.
feel like I would have remembered that. That's why I made the face because I was like, I don't ever remember seeing anything like that. There's definitely a lot of cleavage, but there's no underwear in the movie, from what I remember. But
Most of the ones on the master were like, I guess, husbands and wives that were like scrolling through Amazon and they saw Joaquin Phoenix and they were like, "Oh, I like him." This one
hey, it's
says,
the Joker.
"Yeah." This one says, "I like the main actor, but that's it. This movie is strange and boring all at the same time.
What?
Cannot think of a single positive thing to say about this." That's all. And then this one just describes a scene. They had a scene with nude women and men with their clothes off. Nude men and women with their clothes off for no reason. Lots of screaming, yelling. Wish I hadn't rented this one. Screenplay is awful. Cinematography is cramped and nauseating. The acting is terrible. I'm a huge Philip Seymour Hoffman fan. He just seemed constipated the entire time.
What?
I
What?
don't know. I like
Well,
that.
whatever. That's how
Um,
they like it, I guess. I don't know.
And then this one says that it was like a porno. It's not very funny. It just says poorly made movie. Absolutely disgusting. Anyway, I will say I don't know if you're like this, but every once in a while I get proud of myself when I pick up on something before I read it. And when we came out of the movie, my wife and I were talking about it, and I said, "Did you notice that Philip Seymour Hoffman basically did like an Orson Welles the entire time?" She's like, "Holy crap, he did
Yeah.
it, didn't he?" Like when he's on the
Yeah.
porch, like, who are they? Who are these men? Who are you serious men? Like he was Orson Welles the whole time. And then later I read that was like a big inspiration for how he acted. Sorry.
That that's one of the things I was gonna say actually was I feel like I mean, I guess it's kind of an obvious choice, but Citizen Kane definitely, it felt like a weird comedy mixture between something like like he turned Citizen Kane into a Bob Hope Marx Brothers movie.
I
Like,
love that. That's
yeah,
funny.
that I mean that's how I kind of interpreted the film. I mean, much in the same way that his best friend Tarantino like takes exploitation like grindhouse drive-in 70s movies and tries to make them art. I feel like
Yeah.
that's what Philip Seymour, or not Philip, God, Paul
Paul
Thomas Anderson.
Anderson.
It's the triple name. That's what's getting me. I feel like that's
Marky
what
Mark
Paul
is the
Thomas
guy that
Anderson.
Marky Mark is the
Huh?
guy that coined PTA. He's proud of that. He's like, I'm the one that came up with PTA. And he feels,
Hey.
yeah. But yeah, I like that was something I noticed was like and I was proud of myself for picking up on Orson Welles without being told that. But yeah, basically, like I was saying, it's my favorite movie because it's so strange that like I said, I've talked to so many people that won't even concede that it's funny, let alone a comedy. And like good friends of mine who are like cinephiles, they're just like, and I love that so many like it's like a Rorschach itself. Like people look at this movie and are like,
Yeah.
how do you find this fun? And then other people I talk to are like, it's hilarious. And I've talked to females who are like, it's so tragic, and like I cry at the end. And I'm like, really? Because like I said, I laugh at the end whenever he's like singing, and um
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we need to run. This one's going long, but that's okay. I think this is the season finale. I've been waiting to talk about the
Nope.
master forever. Um, so
Yeah.
my recommendations. I've recommended this filmmaker like 5 times now, but I've recommended almost all of his movies. But is The Mountain by Rick Alverson. It is Jeff Goldblum and Ty
Yeah.
Sheridan. It's about the first lobotomist. And to me, Rick Alverson is like the guy to watch. I think there's a lot of cool new people. You got what's her name? Oh, I can't think of her name. Anna Lily Ampur. You've got
Oh yeah, yeah. She's great.
yeah, you got her.
Great
You've got
filmmaker too.
Safdie brothers. You got a lot of new people, but this guy to me is just on a no new level of like
Oh, I see what you're
confrontational
saying.
filmmaking. But it also takes place in the 50s and has this sort of has the look and feel of the master. And then the other two we talked about earlier, one was Hard Eight. I don't think casual viewers know about Hard Eight. And if you like those Pulp Fiction kind of movies about gambling and drugs and gangsters and cool guys saying cool stuff, this is a great one. It's a really strong debut by like a 24-year-old PTA.
Yeah.
And then my last one, I brought three because I'm the host and Renee said I can do whatever I want. Um, have you seen his documentary, Junon? Have you seen this?
No. No,
So
I
this is
haven't
like
seen any of these movies.
so this is Paul Thomas Anderson and Radiohead guy Johnny Greenwood went out and yeah, about these Indian musicians. And anyway, they filmed. It's very like it's almost like Baraka or something where there's not a lot of talking. It's just sort of footage
Oh
of
yeah.
them. Anyway, it's kind of a lost Paul Thomas Anderson movie. A lot of people don't mention. So, did you have a recommendation? I had asked you
I
to.
I did. So I chose obviously another 80s comedy since Clue is an 80s comedy. This is I recommended I don't know if you can see this. Hold on, let me get
Is that
the
Harlem Shuffle?
no, Hollywood Shuffle. Directed by Robert Townsend. It's written by Robert Townsend and Keenan Ivory Wayans of
Good.
Scary Movie / In Living Color fame. It was a movie that was made on credit cards. They basically got as many credit cards as they could and maxed them out in order to pay for the 35 millimeter film. It's about black actors in Hollywood in the 80s and all the fucking horrible shit they have to deal with, but wrapped in the sandwich, if you will, of a comedy. It's played like a silly comedy, but it's a really incredible movie. It's incredibly funny, first of all, and you get to see kind of like demo versions of like things like In Living Color because they parody like a ton of Hollywood stuff and point out a lot of the racism in like Hollywood things. There's all kinds of fake trailers and TV shows.
Oh, cool.
It's really extremely well done. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. My mom's boyfriend and my, I guess, technically stepdad of many years. He showed it to me when I was like probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11, and I just watched it over and over again. But yeah, it's a really great movie. It's got a fucking cool message, and it's extremely funny, and I cannot recommend it enough. And yeah, Keenan Ivory Wayans is an incredible writer. No matter how silly and lowbrow some people think his body of work is, if you watch him interviewed, he's a fucking yeah, he's an amazing, brilliant
Yeah.
filmmaker,
I
and he
grew
does
up
make
on
very
Living Color.
yeah, he does make very silly comedies, but he can talk the talk and walk the walk of a nerdy academic. Him and Paul Thomas. I would love to see him and Paul Thomas Anderson talk about cinema. It would be amazing
Well,
too.
that's like Paul's favorite thing is like comedies. Like he loves stuff like Ted and like that's why he got into Adam Sandler because he loved Big Daddy so much and like Happy Gilmore. And I've read a lot about Paul Thomas Anderson and like I meant to talk about this when we were actually talking about the movie, but probably my favorite thing about him is it's like why I like Seinfeld and Larry David, the no hugging, no learning. I don't like messages. That's why I'm kind of struggling with Jordan Peele. Like I like that he's doing this like Twilight Zone kind of thing where he's like talking about social issues. And I get it in the context of that, but in general, I don't like a message in my movie. And so I
Yeah,
love that like the master literally, and like he doesn't end up any different than when he left, really. I mean, he's like right back in bed with some strange woman, and he's just like he's still a mess, and like I like that in
yeah.
his movie.
There's
Uh,
there's not really the classic hero's journey like in the. He hasn't changed. I mean, he changed a little bit, but it's like a quarter step away from what he
yeah,
was at the beginning. Basically, that's about it. Now he just knows the cult spiel at the end, and
yeah,
he's
yeah.
like, that's pretty much it.
Well,
He's
yeah,
like, I'm not any
I take
different,
it
but
as
I
like
know this cult spiel.
we know a lot of barflies, and to me, I take it as almost like that movie's like a drunken night for him, where he learned like a card trick, and like now
Yeah,
he's doing that card trick, and that's
yeah,
like kind of how I took the movie. And I like that Paul Thomas Anderson's movies don't really like, there's stuff. I have a joke in one of my, it's not really a joke, but I have a joke about that in my a script I have about character development. I don't know where I'm not going to tell it. It's convoluted, but anyway, but like, I like that there's not a huge character journey. Um, but yeah, that I'm glad we got to talk about these. It's funny how different our favorite movies are and how we arrived at them. And maybe we can do another one on 8.5. And your second, what's your second favorite movie? You
Whew.
have it? You have one?
I would have to say probably To Live and Die in LA by William Friedkin.
Okay,
That'd
I've
probably
never
be my
seen
number
that. So
two.
but you've seen 8.5, right?
I haven't. I haven't seen 8.5.
All right, so let's do that 8.5 next,
Yeah.
I'd rather talk about the newer one. Thinking of ending things because 8.5 has been discussed ad nauseum.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've always wanted to see that William Friedkin movie. I was actually, do you know Lee Tash from Algiers, that band?
Yes.
We were supposed to do one. We just haven't put it on the books yet. William Friedkin. William Friedkin did Sorcerer, right?
Yeah, and Exorcist and
Yeah, those.
so
So I
many
think we're
other
doing
movies.
Sorcerer and Wages of Fear double
Ah,
feature.
nice.
There was a.
God.
Did you see Licorice Pizza?
No, I haven't watched that. That's another one. I everybody's been telling me how incredible that was, and
It's fun. It's light.
I do want to see it.
It almost feels like Richard Linklater, but there's a nod to Sorcerer slash Wages of Fear. There's this whole segment with a truck that's incredible.
Oh,
Um,
nice. Ah,
I think you'll enjoy it. It feels like Richard Linklater, like 70s kids. There's like I said, there's not a huge plot. It's just them kind of have. I love movies like that. I like
a
Odyssey.
hangout movie.
Yeah, I think you'll
You just
enjoy
watch
that one.
people hang out.
Yeah, I get too stressed out with plots. I think I told you I tried to watch Taylor Soldier Spy, and I was
Oh
like,
God.
too much information. I was like, I don't
Yeah.
like this. Well, cool, man. Yeah, thanks for doing this, and yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do that one next if you want. In a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
So
8.5 and To Live and Die in LA. And I'm
no,
sure there is oh no, sorry. I'm thinking of anything.
we'll do that one instead. It's more fun to discuss. Like you should watch 8.5 though. I really
Yeah, I
do.
do want
My sons are getting into movies. Like if in case you didn't know, Rotten
to.
Potatoes, where to go.
Yeah. Check it out,
Rotten,
RottenPotatoes.com.
Rotten Potatoes, yeah, .com. They're not up on the internet yet, but they're working on it. They're getting their copyright. But they'll always ask me like, "What's 8.5 about?" Because I have a poster of it, and they know it's my favorite movie, and it's like hard to explain to like a 10 and 12-year-old. But yeah, you should definitely see, especially as someone who likes to make movies, because you know the basic story. It's like he had done La Dolce Vita, and they were like basically like, "Well, dude, you can whatever you want to do, you got it." And then he was like, "What am I going to do? They told me I can do anything." And so it's like a movie about him trying to figure out, like a director trying to figure out what the hell to do for his next movie.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and it's not plot heavy. It's just producers and his wife and his girlfriend and all these. It's everything I love in a movie. It's funny, it's surreal, it's like cringy and nerd because I like really like nervous humor. I like awkwardness
Yeah.
and stuff. Like I love Larry Sanders Show and like Nathan For You. I like that a lot. I like when
Yeah.
everything's like super awkward. And like
Yeah.
there's some of that in there, and there's just like I don't know, it's just such a beautiful movie. It's so gorgeous. Anyway, we went all over the place, but that's good. That's why I always like talking to movies. I need to get you to agree on camera that we need to do two more because I want to do that, and then I think we should just do one about screenwriting one night because I know a lot of people
Yeah.
are interested in
Yeah.
that because we have
Yeah.
such
That'd be
different
fun.
worldviews and like I said um the way we work is so different, and I don't think
Yes.
either of us think that either's wrong, and we just like different personalities. I think it's interesting because, like I
I
said, like
think you're.
I kind of envy that you worked a year on a script because I don't have the patience for that, and I think that's the coolest because like I've rewritten scripts for a year before. Like I've just gone back and like
Yeah.
revised them. But like every time I've written a first draft, it's my crazy OCD. Like I can't stop until I'm done, and so it's
That's
like
awesome.
so I'm fascinated with your process and stuff.
I hope that I can. I mean, I'm about to start writing another one with my writing partner Becky, and hopefully this one won't take a year. Um, but I mean it. I'm really glad it took us. That's the thing I think, and I guess maybe this will be my last point. It was just like if anybody's writing out there, don't worry about how long or how short it's taking because it changes with each project, and or at least for me. And like I don't know, sometimes like I was definitely like really angry at myself when I was, because honestly even before we started writing the script for this one I'm talking about, I had been kind of like developing that world for like a couple years, and I kept writing like 30 pages, basically the curse of 30 pages, as they say
Yeah.
in the writing world. I kept writing like 30-page versions of the script and then just throwing in the garbage. But like it took as long as it needed to take because now, and nobody has any proof of what I'm saying, but it it it's in order for it to feel real and feel big and feel and for the characters to be who they are, it had to take that long. And sometimes, yeah, that can come out in like 2 weeks or whatever. Or yeah, it just depends. I want to be able to write stuff faster for sure, and so that's what I'm hoping on this next one. Me and Becky are going to write a vampire. We just finished writing a crime comedy. I like to call it a giallo comedy. And then yeah, and that's the one I've been talking about. And then we're going to start writing a vampire movie, and I'm hoping that won't take as long. But
Awesome.
anyway.
All right, we'll come back to be continued. All right, thanks, Ian. I'll see you in the
Yeah,
green room.
thank you.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks,
Yes.
Cosmos TV, Creative TV.
Yeah,
Sorry we
thank you
took
all
so
so
long.
much.
This was a long episode. All right, see you